Okay, Bricks fans, I just wanted to talk about the Bricks Builder code widget and whether it's safe to use or not, because it can be a little bit confusing as to whether it is or not. And the reality is that it is and it isn't. Now, I want to talk about what that means in reality of how you can use this. It is absolutely brilliant if you want to put things straight on the DOM. Like if you had an SVG, for example, you don't want to wrap it into a text box or anything like that. You want to stick an SVG straight on the DOM. Or you get some iframe from a vendor who wants you to embed an iframe into the page. You can use the code block to do that and just put the iframe straight onto the DOM. It's a really, really powerful thing, but it also has a danger to it if you use it incorrectly. So if we look at the code block that I'll put on here, for example, I've created some script just using ChatGPT, where if this script was allowed to run, it would, when a user logs in, it would grab all of the cookies, would grab all of the local storage items, combine them into a data object, and it would send that to an endpoint. All right? So you imagine that if this script was allowed to run on a page, an administrator logs into the site, goes to the page, and now all of their credentials that are saved into local storage and cookies get sent to a hacker. He can now mimic you by setting his local storage and cookies to the same as yours, and he can now log into that site as if he was you and has full administrative rights. So you do not want this to be able to run on your site at all, right? So by default, Bricks has all code execution disabled, and that's a very sensible thing to start with, okay? Now, imagine if you did have that enabled. I'm going to actually go in and enable that. So I'm going to enable it just for administrators. And then refresh our page. So what enabling it has done is it's given this switch here, which wasn't enabled. We didn't have that switch until we allowed administrators to execute code. All right, so now we've got a switch where you can say, yep, we want that to execute, and we want it to render without a wrapper, which means it sticks this straight onto the DOM. Render without a wrapper, basically, if it's got a wrapper, it'll put a div on the page saying that it's Bricks code, and inside the div, it'll put your content. You render without wrapper, this content here goes straight onto the DOM. So you imagine now, if I let this execute, from now on, whenever anyone logged in and went to a page, it's going to send all of their cookies in their local storage to a potential hacker, right? Not good, okay. So what can you do about this? Well, if you are an administrator, and this code you definitely wouldn't use, but if you are an administrator and you want JavaScript to be able to run on the page, and you just create a simple JavaScript here, and it could be to console log, I don't know, window. You'd never do this, but I'm just chucking in an example. You wanted that script to run on every page. As the administrator, you can add this code, enable the code execution, and that will run on every single page, right? But what if you have authors and editors that are adding posts to the page? Okay, now the authors and editors, you do not want them to be able to add scripts that are going to potentially expose users' credentials to a hacker or whatever other purpose that there could be to create vulnerabilities on this website. You do not want authors and editors to be able to do that at all, right? So what this does is that if you don't have authors, editors, and contributors checked here, they will not get this code execute code box, which means that all they can do if they added this code is it just prints it onto the page. It does not execute it. So from a security perspective, I think it makes sense to have editor, author, and contributor always disabled. Never allow them to run scripts on a page. Okay? But I don't see any problem with administrators being able to run these scripts because quite often you need to do that. And it's a really convenient way of adding things directly to the DOM. So I think it's really useful, but that would be my go-to. Only administrators, never allow anyone else, okay? Now, once it's enabled, that will run in the front end for anybody. Okay, so this is not saying only run the code for people if they're logged in as administrator. it will run the code. Once it's enabled, it'll run the code for all visitors to that website, whether they're logged in or not. Okay, so this is a bit different to what you might think. This is only controlling whether you can switch this switch on or not. Okay, that was the confusion I had to get my head around, because I was avoiding this because I didn't want the potential security risks, but understanding that, I think I'm okay with this. And the beauty of this is you could put SVGs here, you could put iframes here, whatever you like, and they go straight onto the DOM without any problems. If you could not execute the code and you put an iframe in there, it's just going to have the iframe code output on the screen. You want to be able to enable it so that it actually outputs. So interestingly enough, execute code means stick it on the DOM. Okay. Now, another really cool thing, and I was going to mention, is that in this one code block, you can actually run PHP. So I can do PHP. Oh. And in that PHP, you could say, oh, I don't know, echo. Okay. And that's going to echo hello onto the screen using PHP. So this could be retrieving something from a database, or from an API using curl or whatever you like. So you can actually run the PHP code there. You can run scripts here. You can put styles here. You can put iframes there. Whatever you need to put there, you can put it there and it goes straight onto the DOM. So this is the most low-level component that you can use, and it's extremely powerful. So I'll definitely be using it from now on. But my go-to was that I'll only enable it for administrators, because I do not want editors, authors, or contributors being able to execute PHP or JavaScript in here. I mean, another idea here is if you allowed them to execute, they could have a PHP script here which actually installs files in your file system and opens up your entire system to hackers. So enable this with caution. When you enable this, even if you're an administrator, don't just simply copy and paste JavaScripts and PHP and whatnot from, websites that you've seen it on there. Make sure that it's safe before you put it there. Exactly the same as if you stuck it into a code editor anyway, but just an extra level of caution. Don't assume it's safe, and don't enable it for anyone that's not an administrator. And last point there is, do not make anyone an administrator that doesn't need to be one. I don't know how many times you guys have seen this. I've picked up sites and every single person, the accounts lady, the manager, the owner, the young apprentice, they're all administrators on the website, because that was the easiest thing to do to give them access. You do that and you're opening yourself to a world of pain anyway. But anyway, that's my little bit of a rant, I guess, on this code block. I will definitely use it. I think it's great, but use it with caution and only enable for administrators. If you like this kind of thing, hit the subscribe, hit the like. Thank you.